Hi, let's try this again. Today is Saturday, May 9th, 2026, and I've been posting these videos as a form of recovery from the trauma of watching my little brother Paul Kieran, 64, with Down syndrome, be locked away by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government, David Eby as leader, Nikki Sharma as Attorney General, for 588 days. And then I believe that the person that they had appointed guardian of my brother, my nun's sister, had Paul killed. They did medical assistance in dying on him after he had a stroke. So Paul was locked away on September 12th of 2022 when I complained to the Burnaby RCMP after I discovered a secret and what I alleged to be a fraudulent and forged power of attorney the government created to give Paul the COVID-19 shot. And they appointed my then 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario, who had moved out when Paul was born and who only met him a few times, who did not understand his speech or communication as Paul's guardian for all decisions. And when I complained to the police, they ordered her to do something. And what she did through her lawyers, she had two law firms working for her, Charles Gibson in Ottawa and Borden Ladner Gervais with Casey Deanshaw in Vancouver. So I got a letter from Charles Gibson saying that my visits with Paul were terminated. And I got a letter from the group homes lawyer saying that I would never see my brother again. Eventually, they relented a little and they said that I could visit him. I could have a telephone call with him for 10 minutes a day, even though I had an agreement with the government that I could visit with him in person twice a week, once at my home and once at his group home. So I did everything in my power to try and restore Paul's visits. Every penny I had or could borrow, I went to the court and tried to restore his visits, tried to become his guardian, but I was not successful. My applications for leave to appeal were refused by the Supreme Court of Canada twice. So on April 14th, 2 years ago, April 15th, I got an email from my sister's Vancouver lawyer, Casey Deanshaw, and he said that Paul had had a stroke, but that I could arrange a visit through him. I dropped everything and went to Burnaby Hospital and saw Paul for the first time in 588 days. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it so hard. I thought he was going to crush it when I said my name. He was struggling very hard to recover. I know Paul, he's a fighter, and everything that he could do to recover from the stroke. He sat up, he grabbed a book from my hands, turned the pages perfectly. He was so happy to see me. Then, out of the blue, I was only allowed to visit him for 10 minutes a day, so I sat in the hallway of the hospital for 10 to 12 hours a day. While I was sitting out there, I got a telephone call from the Burnaby RCMP saying they had been ordered by their oversight agency in Ottawa to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney, naming my sister, the nun, as Paul's guardian. So I was really excited. That sergeant then sent me a copy of the letter from the officer in charge to me by email saying that they had been ordered to reopen the investigation. And I thought, oh, finally somebody's listening to me. Finally, Paul will get some justice. I went to court the next morning and asked the judge to suspend the nun's guardianship over Paul pending the RCMP investigation, but we didn't get on. And when I got back to the hospital, all of Paul's medical supports had been removed by the nun. She had instructed the treating doctor at the hospital, Dr. Michael Baker, to remove Paul's, he had oxygen mask, a ventilator, that had been removed. Everything was removed except for his intravenous, and I believe that they sedated him to death right in front of me. If you can imagine watching your last surviving family member, local family member, and best friend of 66 years being killed right in front of your eyes. My sister wouldn't look me in the eye. When I came into the hospital, in Paul's hospital room, she said between gritted teeth, "Say goodbye to Paul, he's dying." But she wouldn't look me in the eye, and she wouldn't let me near his face. I took his hand, and it was still. His eyes were wide open and unfocused. At that point, which was the late afternoon of April 22nd, 2024, he appeared to be dead. I then got an email from her the next day, April 23rd, saying that he had died at 10:15 in the morning, but that I could come and look at his body. I'm not making this up. This is what she actually said. And then after Paul, while this investigation by the RCMP was going on, after Paul died, then the nun took me to court for 4 days in November of 2024 to have me designated permanently for life a vexatious litigant, taking away my access to the courts. Now, even though I had been trained as a psychologist, I worked as a psychologist for the province of British Columbia with mentally handicapped adults. And then I went to law school. I was a federal prosecutor for 3 years. And then I practiced family law for 23 years. And despite all of that, the nun took me to court and had me designated a vexatious litigant, which I appealed. I was not successful. I was not granted leave to appeal by the Supreme Court of Canada. So currently I'm designated a vexatious litigant, which means I can't even file an affidavit. I can't even file a response. If you sued me, I couldn't file a response without permission of a judge. I just applied to vary that order, and that was my application to vary the order was rejected or dismissed this week. So I have to go back again with further information. So while all of this was going on, I was so preoccupied, I wasn't paying attention to how the law in Canada had changed with regards to murder. So murder is the most serious, and first-degree murder is murder with, it's the most serious offense in the Criminal Code of Canada. Right? It's right up there with treason, I believe. But it used to be a hanging offense until 1999. It was a hanging. You could have the death penalty for first-degree murder, but they changed it. I discovered that the Supreme Court of Canada, relatively secretly, without really anybody knowing, I certainly didn't know. The Supreme Court of Canada is composed of 9 government-appointed judges. They're federal employees. They're paid extremely handsomely. And they reversed an earlier decision. So there was the first time that the issue of euthanasia came before it was, I think, about 20 years ago. And they said no, that euthanasia was unlawful and that people could not be killed by doctors and nurses. Then a group, a nonprofit, non-governmental agency called Death with Dignity pushed to have that changed. They put forward a woman named Kay Carter. So the case is Canada versus Carter. And they put forward a case, even though Kay Carter had already died, she had gone to Switzerland. There's of the 196 recognized jurisdictions or countries in the world, there's only 4 that allow euthanasia: Switzerland, Spain, Netherlands, and now Canada. So they reversed themselves anonymously. So usually judges' decisions are authored by specific judges, and some people dissent, some judges might dissent, and it's the majority that's successful. But anonymously and unanimously, in February of 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada reversed itself to allow doctors, regular doctors and nurses, to kill, even though the case was moot and the woman was already dead. They reversed themselves, and they gave the Government of Canada 1 year, 12 months, to come up with guardrails. So a system of preventing the unlawful use of murder, of killing people as a form of medical treatment. Even though in the history of civilization, 40,000 years of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, no one's ever come up with a system for euthanasia or for killing elderly, ill, and disabled people that doesn't take advantage of elderly, ill, and disabled people. And so I was shocked to find this out. And of course, the kinds of people that Canada kills, all it takes is the signature of, there's no judicial oversight at all, no legal oversight at all. There's no sworn documents. It's just a piece of paper with the signatures of any doctor and any nurse. So any two medical practitioners, they do not need to know the person, and they do not need to be an expert in any condition that the person's suffering from. And on the death certificate, it cannot say that the person was executed extrajudicially by a lethal injection. It has to say that the person died of whatever complaint they were complaining of at the time of their death. So multiple sclerosis or whatever the cancer, whatever the issue was. And as I said, the kinds of people that these doctors and nurses will kill has exploded since February of 2015. And by Canada Day this year, by July 1st of 2026, Canada will have executed extrajudicially by lethal injections. So they inject these people with a drug that was never tested for that purpose, because that would be unethical. And it paralyzes the person and they drown in their own fluids. So we don't know that it's a painless death. And so by July 1st of 2026, Canada will have executed extrajudicially more than 100,000 innocent, vulnerable, mostly elderly, ill, and disabled people. So people have changed their minds and they've been killed anyways. There was a woman one of the witnesses, the medical witnesses, said that he felt that she was being pressured to be killed by her husband, who wanted her wealth. And he scratched his name off the form. So they just went and found another witness. She had said that she didn't want to be killed, but they killed her anyways. A few weeks ago, a woman, an 84-year-old woman, went to the Vancouver General, where I've been many, many times. She went to Vancouver General Emergency complaining of a sore back, and they didn't even ask her what the problem was. They said, a young female doctor walked up to her and said, "We've decided to offer you MAID." So they use this horrible, made-up propaganda word of MAID, M-A-I-D. They love that. They love, these fascist, authoritarian dictators love made-up words. So number one, never, ever, ever use the word MAID. It's worse than the N-word. It has exactly the same impact and intended effect, and it's the same as the N-word. So if you wouldn't use the N-word, don't use MAID. Never say MAID. So if you want a quick argument for why euthanasia is morally and legally wrong, is number one, no one can give informed consent to being killed. We don't know what death is. In my religion, Catholicism, I believe that my loved ones have gone to heaven. I'd like to think that they went to heaven and they're with Jesus. If they committed mortal sins, they're going to burn in hell forever. And if they died with sins that were not forgiven, or if they were not baptized, they will go to purgatory. So that's in the Catholic religion and most Christian religions. Some people believe that you just cease to exist after you die, but probably the most common belief in the world is that it's in reincarnation, that most people believe that you're reincarnated as a different spirit, but we just don't know. No one's ever come back from death, and so we don't know, and no one can possibly give informed consent to being killed. So that's probably the most important. And also the word medical comes from the Greek to heal, so it's misleading. It's a misrepresentation. It's called medical assistance in dying because doctors and nurses do it. Well, doctors and nurses can take out the garbage, but that doesn't mean they're garbage men. Secondly, it's final. It's irreversible. People cannot change their mind. That's probably the main reason why the death penalty was ended in 1999 in Canada, is because people can make mistakes. They can change their mind about everything except for death. And the third reason that you can give people, so number one, you can't consent to it. Number two, it's irreversible. And number three, there's a false theory of implementation that when the Supreme Court of Canada in February of 2015 gave Canada 12 months to come up with a system of implementation of euthanasia that was fair and that there wouldn't be people who were killed that did not consent to it. It's not possible to do. It hasn't been done in 40,000 years because of human nature and greed. Already, the organs of the people that have been euthanized in Canada are being harvested at a profit for the government. So the government saves money by harvesting the organs of these people. So there's many motivations, and some people just love killing people. The worst serial killer in the United Kingdom in history was a medical doctor named Harold Shipman, who killed over 250 of his patients as medical care. And the worst female serial killer in Canada was a woman named Elizabeth Wetlauer, and she killed 11 of her patients. So there's people that really, they are addicted to killing people. There's already a doctor in Vancouver who boasts that she's euthanized over 700 people, and that's all she does all day long. So I just wanted one thing that people, it's almost, it's a verboten to talk about euthanasia in Canada. People don't want to talk about it. But when they do, they say, well, why shouldn't people be able to be euthanized if that's their choice, if they consent to it? And I just think I lived through, and I can recall very clearly, the Jonestown massacre that took place on November 18th of 1978, where more than 900 people appeared to commit suicide. They appeared to consent to dying. That's where the expression "to drink the Kool-Aid" comes from. But these were people that were part of a religious cult run by a megalomaniac named Jim Jones. And it was started in San Francisco, but he moved them to Guyana when the government in California started taking an interest in this cult. But those people appeared to have consented, but they were poor. They lacked choices. Lots of them were elderly and disabled. And he really wanted to kill a lot of people for the same reason the other megalomaniacs like Hitler want to kill a lot of people. So, and this is exactly the same population of people that Canada's killing. 100,000 people, 45 people today. Mark Carney used taxpayers' money to execute extrajudicially as medical care. 45 people today. People just like me. 96% of them are white. And I estimate that almost all of them, if not all of them, are Canadian-born citizens. We're in this horrible situation. I just wanted to give you an argument. If you're speaking with anybody about this, fight, fight, fight. Thank you all for listening. I love you all. Take care.